Government and business have joined forces in a bid to root out corruption. The anti-corruption hashtag Tumamina Drive was launched yesterday. Government and business says graft is hampering development in the country, and they say it doesn't only discourage investment but also diverts limited public financial resources meant for meaningful socio-economic upliftment. They are urging all South Africans to participate and take a stand against the scourge. Now, for more on this, we are joined in studio by Corruption Watch's Malusi Ngala. Good morning to you, sir. Thank you very much for joining us here on Afro World View.
Good morning.
Let's chat briefly about the biggest corruption trends we've witnessed in South Africa due to or based on this report that has been released by Corruption Watch.
Well, this report spans over a period of 6 months, starting from the 1st of Jan to the end of June 2018. And it's a compilation of all the reports of corruption that we have received from ordinary South Africans from all walks of life, who have come to us, reached out to Corruption Watch, whether online, via email or website, or walk-ins or telephonically. And people have notified us of various trends, the various forms of corruption that are occurring. And in this report, the ACT report, Analysis of Corruption Trends report, we highlight 6 areas in which corruption is quite pervasive.
So talk us through what those 6 major areas are then, and what the biggest concerns are with regards to corruption in South Africa.
So the areas that we are unpacking in this report, at schools, the South African Police Service, the health sector, state-owned entities, municipalities, which then also includes licensing centers. The forms of corruption that are pervasive across the board, so in all 6 areas, it's bribery, as well as irregularities in employment, irregularities in procurement, as well as the embezzlement of funds and the theft of resources.
According to this report, 39.8% of the corruption incidents were reported in 3 provinces. Talk us through those stats and which provinces are the most severely impacted and why.
So the 39.8 is attributed to Gauteng. This is the province from which we have received the highest number of complaints about corruption. This does not mean that corruption is the province that is the most corrupt. It just simply means that how we read it, at least, is that most of our activities are based here because our offices are here. So our resources generally are focused in this particular area. But then, of course, you need to factor in that because of economic opportunities, people flock to Gauteng province. And usually it's the metros that are that found most people coming to. So City of Johannesburg, for example, counts for over 20% of the reports received. City of Tshwane, just over 10%, if I'm not mistaken. So, you know, it's that kind of trend. Then the second province is KZN, KwaZulu-Natal. That is followed by Western Cape, as well as Eastern Cape.
Malusi, let's chat briefly about some of the issues and concerns that have been raised in our education sector in South Africa. We've heard of reports, we've heard of stories involving principals and teachers and embezzlement. What have you found to be concerns in the education sector?
Now, the education within our schools, there are several forms of corruption that we found quite concerning, but what is most noticeable in this report, people will see that we highlight sextortion, which is essentially a crime or a corrupt activity, if you so prefer, wherein the officials within schools, principals and teachers, are said to be soliciting sexual favors from learners in exchange for marks or promotions to next grades. We do have problems with embezzlement of funds and theft of resources. What reporters have highlighted in this respect is that officials, principals in the main, or other SGB members will steal funds that are meant to upgrade or renovate school premises or get equipment for children, teaching aids and learning equipment and so on. And they will use it for their own benefit.
With regards to issues of local government and the type of corruption we are seeing there, because this is really the instances where people on the ground and the poorest of the poor are affected, because these funds are meant to be used to benefit them and make their lives better. When it comes to local government, where do we need to improve? Where are we seeing the loopholes, and what needs to be done to change the corruption that we're seeing there?
As for what needs to be done, I mean, I think it's a very difficult question to answer, because we may spend hours and hours talking about that. But I mean, when we look at municipalities and the corruption that's manifesting there, it counts for, this area of concern counts for about 9.2% of the almost 2,500 reports that we received. But what is highlighted here generally by reporters is that procurement remains an issue. In fact, compared to the first edition of the ACTA report, procurement issues have skyrocketed to over 40%, almost 44%. And, you know, this is a form of corruption that involves not only big business, but small, medium enterprises who are more than willing to pay bribes to officials just to secure a tender. As well as, so the other form of corruption that's also quite prevalent in the municipalities is employment, irregular employment, where people are given jobs based on who they know. So it might be a friend or family member or political connection.
And Melusi, where are we seeing the biggest increase in corruption? What sector is currently the most concerning? Because they all are obviously concerning, but where are we seeing corruption grow the most currently?
I mean, the schools one has increased by approximately 1.4%, but you have to look at something like the state-owned entities and the health sector, which are areas that we are featuring for the first time in this report. And we do so because we were pressed by reporters who came to us and alerted us to what was happening in these sectors. So state-owned entities, for example, we still see issues of procurement there. Procurement has risen from 36% to 44% in that area, and it's a sad story where contractors who have had contracts with an entity such as Eskom, for example, are still getting preferential treatment just because they are more than willing to pay for a holiday, you know, to an official so that they can be awarded a tender. In health, we think of that as quite a concerning issue, and hence we've even launched a campaign that's going to look at health issues, because not only is procurement an issue, but there's issues of theft where officials working at clinics and now hospitals are accused of stealing medical equipment or medication. Now, for the latter, we find that when they do happen to steal the medication, they at times sell it to drug dealers who in turn produce drugs such as Nyaupe.
I see. Melusi, thank you very much for joining us this morning. We appreciate your time, and we appreciate you unpacking these stats and details with us here on Afro Worldview. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you for having me.